And Aryeh and Mira that normally come are coming tonight, and whoever's watching with us, Yael, or Zahava, or Katie, or whoever it is, and of course my mother. My mother watches every week. She's now in Brazil, traveling. She should be safe and healthy, B'ezrat Hashem, and us as well. And also Vital watches, and David, and Carlos, have a bunch of people who watch afterwards. So before I begin, this is the last class until after Pesach. So that'll be April 14th, because even if I'm not cleaning next week, I'll probably be working so that I can clean right afterwards, or whatever it is. So my goal tonight is to finish the lesson that we've been learning the last few weeks. This is Ayin Tet 79. And in the lesson, Reb Nosson talks about how every person has an aspect of Moshe Moshiach within them. And that means that all of the tzaddikim have this pchina, this pchina, this aspect of Moshe Moshiach. And we also have it within ourselves. So the tzaddikim do it through mesirut nefesh, through self-sacrifice. And Moshe Rabbeinu, as we know, was willing to sacrifice his life for the Jewish people after the golden calf. Hashem said, I'm going to wipe out the Jewish people. And Moshe said, no, if you're going to wipe them out, wipe me out. That is the self-sacrifice that Noach didn't have in his day. And also we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, when we were fighting Amalek, he held his hands up. I'm trying to get my hands on the screen here. V'yadav emunah, I think is what it said, that his hands were emunah. Meaning that his hands being up gave everybody the emunah to continue fighting the battle. And at some point, of course, he couldn't physically hold his hands up, so Yoshua, I think it was Yoshua and Caleb, held his hands, and then they put 2 stones next to him, and his hands were there. And the whole time that the Jewish people saw his hands up, they knew that they could win the battle. What is the aspect of Moshe Moshiach within us? Is doing tshuva. And tshuva we can do on two levels. He talks about tshuva of the 6 days of the week and the tshuva of Shabbos. So the tshuva of the 6 days of the week means that we do a transgression, then we say we don't want to do it anymore, we stop, then we do it again, and then we stop, and then we do it again, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. That's the 6 days of the week. But Shabbos, we have, he says, Naicha, quotes it in Aramaic. We have rest on Shabbos. And when you do the tshuva of Shabbos, it's tshuva shlema, it's something that you'll never go back to. So the example that I gave is when I was much younger and I started keeping Shabbos when I was in college. So I had some Shabbos where I'd go to a restaurant Friday night after going to services. I drove my car on Shabbos. But now I would never do those things. So back then it was back and forth, back and forth. Now it's the level of tshuva shlema. So that's where we left off. So we have one small section here where he kind of reviews this. And then in addition, from Reb Nosson, and that completes the lesson. And hopefully, the plan is to get through it, because if we come back to this after Pesach, we won't even remember where we left off. Okay. זה כמו שפירשנו, היינו שעושה תשובה שלמה שהיא בחינת שבת. And this is like we explained, that when a person does complete tshuva, it's on the level of Shabbos. שידחה הרב לגמרי, שתהיה העבירה רחוקה ממנו, ואפילו אינו בכוח אצלו. That a person pushes away the evil completely. They have no desire to do the transgression anymore. It's not even in potential. Eino b'koach etzlo. V'na'asa kulo tov. And the person, or I guess the action, has become completely good. Sheyesh lo koach lichbosh et ha'bchira. The person has the power to overcome their free choice to do good or to do bad. They only want to do good. וזה בחינת משה משיח. And this is an aspect of Moshe Moshiach, המתלבש בצדיקי האמת. It's enclosed in the true tzadikim. This is something that we'll see in the true tzadikim, that you can reach this level of Moshe Moshiach by doing tshuva on the level of Shabbos. Shene'emar, as it says, umate elokim biyado. And Hashem's staff was in his hand. Hainu shaya biyado la'afoch hamate meira latov. That is, it was within it his power to turn the staff from bad to good. I'm guessing we're talking about the staff of Moshe. Let's see what it says here, 25. Betach ba'Hashem siman she'oto ha'et holecha beito ve'ino. Okay, now this is talking about the different types of doing tshuva. So I'm assuming that's Moshe Rabbeinu's staff. פירוש שבכוח משה משיח להפוך את המטה שהוא בחינת טוב ורע ביחד להיות רק טוב לגמרי. So the staff, I wish it said here what the staff was. David will send me a correction afterwards. He always sends me a WhatsApp and says what the staff is. Okay, Mate Elokim biyado. I'm assuming that's Moshe Rabbeinu holding the staff, and the staff had the ability to have good and bad, but you had a choice of what you could turn it to. So just like that, we have the same choice of turning something bad into completely good and then never coming back to it again. Umate ba'atzmo kodem shene'epach, and the staff itself, before it was transformed, ubchinat ra v'tov me'oravim yachad. It's the aspect of good and bad that are combined together. B'chinat eitz hadad tov v'ra. Just like the tree of good and bad. Zeu b'chinat malach matat. And this is the aspect of the angel matat. So matat has a name that we're not supposed to say. So it's an abbreviation here, matat. And this is the angel of death. And the angel of death also has within it good and good and bad. Mitzado chayim, mitzado mavet. It has the side of good and it has the side of life. Now, I don't know if he's going to explain it here, but it's something interesting worth exploring. Why would you would think the angel of death is only bad? What's the good in the death? I'm assuming, it doesn't say here anywhere, that the reason that death is good is because we know that we have an end. If a person lived forever, so the person say, well, I'll do tshuva never, because I'm going to live forever. So why do tshuva? I'm going to fix this thing or fix that thing, what should I do? But when a person knows, and Hashem gives us all these signs, people that we know die, people that are young die, famous people die, or they get into accidents and they become paralyzed and all kinds of things, and it gives a shock to our system. That's the good in the bad. The bad has to be there also to have the good. Ki hu b'chinat tov v'ra. So the angel of death is the aspect of good and bad. Ki matat hu b'chinat sheshet sitrei mishnah. Because the angel of death is the aspect of the 6 tractates or the 6 volumes of the Mishnah. Limud hanigle she'atorah. The revealed learning in the Torah. Shezeh b'chinat sheshet me'achon, which is connected to the 6 days of the week. Shehim b'chinat sheshet sidrei Mishnah, which is connected to the 6 volumes of the Mishnah. Shekluyim b'sheshet b'chinot, that are included within them the 6 attributes of kasher pasul, kosher and forbidden, tameh v'tahor, unpure and pure, or impure and pure, asur mutar, forbidden and permitted, kanuda, as is known. So those are the 6 things that a person goes back between: kosher, not kosher, pure, impure, permitted, not permitted. And that's the 6 days of the week, and that's the zigzag that a person does when they're trying to do tshuva. And those people that are still not set in their ways of serving Hashem, meaning in the positive way of serving Hashem, because sometimes a person does things that are good, and sometimes they fall into doing transgressions. And their tshuva is still not complete. So sometimes a person has these thoughts of doing tshuva, and then they begin to do a little bit of the process of coming closer to Hashem. And then afterwards they fall from this level. And they return to the place that they were before. Just like before they did tshuva. That actually makes me think of Matasiel, the singer. Here's a guy who really became famous because he looked like he was a Chabadnik and he was rapping like a Jamaican. And that got him on all the TV shows. He is a talented musician, there's no question.
He looked like a Chabadnik, or he wasn't a Chabadnik?
No, he was a Chabadnik, but people saw him as a Chabadnik. He also spent some time here in the neighborhood. He came to Mayanot, he came to Batiran, so I got to see him a little bit. He just seemed like really a confused guy. All that fame was too much for him. He'd show up to shul in sunglasses, like anybody in Batiran had ever heard of Matasiel. Nobody gave a damn who he was. Even if I said to them, he's a famous singer, they're like, what, Haredi? Will we know him? We don't know him, we don't know him. And then he became secular, completely secular.
Divorced his wife, I think, too.
Divorced his wife, became secular. And so that's a person that had these thoughts and did tshuva, but then returned to the place that he was before. But then afterwards, a person is inspired, but then they fall again and return to where they were before, into some transgression. And so it changes every time from good to bad, or from bad to good. This is the tshuva, that's the 6 days of the week. That this is kosher and treif, as we mentioned before. So the person sometimes does the transgression, sometimes they do tshuva, sometimes they're kosher, sometimes they're treif. Sometimes they're permitted, sometimes they're forbidden, sometimes they're pure, sometimes they're impure. And the reason is because they don't have any rest from this. These transgressions are calling them all the time. When a person does complete tshuva, this is an aspect of Shabbos, as we explained. Moshe Moshiach, and is connected to Moshe Moshiach, that he had within his power to turn the staff, so I was right before, it was the staff of Moshe, from bad to good. just like turning the angel of death from bad to good. Perush, מבחינת עץ הדעת טוב ורע, לבחינת עץ החיים שהוא רק טוב. From the tree that had the option of being good or bad, to the tree that's only good, the tree of life. ונדחה הרע לגמרי, and the evil is completely pushed aside. וזהו בחינת shakai. And this is the aspect of the name of Hashem that begins with Shin and then says Dai, which you're not supposed to say the name. She'amar le'olamot Dai. That Hashem said to his world, that's it, I'm finished. B'bchinat menucha shel Shabbat. And this is the rest that we have in Shabbos. V'yesh lonaicha menucha mikol v'chol ki kvar zacha lichbosh b'chira biyado. The person has rest from everything because now they have the power to conquer their free will. Even though they have the choice of doing bad, they want to do good. Ve'ein mitiyareh mehara sheyitfasenu. And the person is not fearful that the evil will come and grab him. Ve'af she'madriga zo shayechet le'tzadik ha'emet. And even though this level really belongs only to a true tzaddik, shehu zocheh levatel hara b'shlemut, that he merits to be, as the Chabad understanding of being a tzaddik is that there's no more Yetzer Hara. Mikol makom yesh nafkamina bedavar shegam lekol adam. Even though it's only for tzaddikim, we can extrapolate from this something that every person can get from it. Shetzarich litbatel v'liyot mekusher legamri letzaddik haemet. That we have to nullify ourselves and be completely attached to the true tzaddik. V'al yedei zeh yazrehu HaTzadik lichbosh dara shelo. And through this, the tzaddik will help the person conquer the evil within themselves. So that's relevant for when there's a living tzaddik and a person can attach themselves to them, but also for the writings of Reb Nosson. And what does it mean to be nullified and attached?
Does it say how the tzaddik is going to help?
The tzaddik gives you advice. And that was the answer that I was going to say. So how does it work now that Reb Nosson died, in 1810? How does that work? I can't talk with him. He basically said everything that I would say to you, I put it in Likutey Moharan. So it's all here. So learn Likutey Moharan. And when I tell you to do something, like I tell you, if you're doing tshuva and your tshuva is wavy, going back and forth, then when it reaches the point of Shabbos, you'll know that you did tshuva shlema. When that thing is no longer tempting for you. I mean, I'm a vegetarian, so eating meat is not a transgression by any means. It's a mitzvah in the Torah to eat meat. But I don't have any desire to eat meat. So if a person sticks a piece of non-kosher meat in front of my face, I wouldn't eat it. But I wouldn't eat it if it was any meat. The joke I tell people when they say, "What, you don't eat meat?" I say, "No, there's no hasher good enough for me." And some people took me seriously when I said that. I'm like, "What? You only eat vegetarian and fish?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, wow, I wish I could do that. So I was like, it's a joke. Anyhow, he says, "How can we be connected to the tzaddik?" And he also has a lesson about this Likutey Moharan. He says, "Stop asking questions. I tell you what to do here. Just do what I say. Don't. If I say turn right, turn right. If I say turn left, turn left. Just do what I say." And there is a lot of good advice here. For example, a Zamra. Take a Zamra and say, Nikudot Avot, find the good in everyone and everything. That is a life's work. And a person could be depressed. Let's just say sad, because depression can be a chemical thing. And how do you get out of sadness? By looking at the Nikudot Avot. By looking at the good in others and looking at the good in yourself. And that's also, it's a thread throughout all the lessons here. He says, how do we find the good in death? In the same way, here we found the good in death, because death gives us a deadline, which puts a little fire under our tuchus and makes us want to do things. The B'chinat Malach Matat, who gam ken B'chinat Shakai, and also the angel of death is an aspect of Hashem's name, Shin Daled Yud, ki afal pin she'amanu B'chinat Matat, who Mishneh, shu B'chinat Kasher, okay, even though we said Matat, is connected to the fluctuation between doing tshuva and not doing tshuva. Ve'ilu b'chinat shem shakai hu tahor legamre, but Hashem's name Shakai is completely pure. B'chinat eitz chaim, connected to the tree of life. Yesh lomar, we can say dechol ma shematat hu b'chinat mishneh, that בבחינת עץ הדעת וטוב ורע, זה דווקא מששת ימי החול, אבל בשבת, במנוחה, ויש עליה מתת בעצמו. ויש עליה למתת בעצמו. Okay, there's so many things here that it's hard for me to stop the sentence. So we know that he's asking the question, how can the angel of death, which is the fluctuation between good and bad, be connected to the level of Hashem that's called Shaddai, meaning that Hashem made and that's it, meaning the aspect of Shabbos. How can the fluctuations, how can a person that hasn't reached a level where they stop doing transgressions be on the level that they stopped doing the transgression? That's the question he's asking. Ba'menucha, because when Shabbat comes, rest comes, v'yesh alea lematat ba'atzmo, and I guess the angel of death also has rest on Shabbat. K'mo shene'amar v'yishpot mikol malachto, ze b'chinat shakai. Oh, you're shaking the table.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, be careful because there's people on board here. That he v'yishpot mikol malachto means that Hashem stopped all of his work. And that's the aspect of Shakai. She'amar le'olamot dai, that Hashem said enough, that's it, I'm done building the world. Hainu shvita hamalacha v'hamenucha. Okay, so he's repeating himself again and again, making the idea clearer. That is, rest from work and rest in general. So it follows, I'm just going to translate the Hebrew as it goes. So it follows that the work itself, we don't do on Shabbat. אזי נכלל מתת מבחינת שקי. ולכן גם מבחינת מלאך מתת, שהוא בחינת, okay, so he's saying, when we do the work that we're supposed to do during the 6 days, and then Shabbos comes, that's when we bring the angel of death, as it were, into Shabbos, or we bring our incomplete selves into a complete Shabbos. Maybe because Shabbos gives us the framework to be a person that we can't be during the rest of the week. Comes out from this that when a person does complete tshuva, b'chinat Shabbat, kamo she'amarnu, that's the aspect of Shabbos as we said, al yidei zeh yechol lirot shifluto kanal. Through this, a person can see their own humility. Okay, so I'm not going to repeat that, because we talked about that before. Now I want to get to the last section here. So he's going to explain how the opening verse, which was Patach b'Hashem b'aseh tov, remember? Let's go back to the opening verse. Patach b'Hashem b'aseh tov, shchonei eretz emunah. Trust in Hashem, do good, settle the land, and herd your faith, or develop your faith. That's the quote that he opened up with. So now he's going to show us how this whole Torah connects to that. V'zehu bi'or katuv. And this is an explanation of what it says. Badach b'Hashem b'aseh tov shchonei eretz emunah. Badach b'Hashem, trust in Hashem, lashon hashket v'vetach. Be completely confident and trust in Hashem. Sheyesh lo menucha mikol v'kol. And through this, so the quiet of the bitachon gives a person rest from everything. V'aseh tov, and do good. Sheta'aseh hetara tov, make the bad into good. Hainu shemitapech nira latov gamur. That is, that the evil should turn into good completely. Shchon eretz, settle the land. Hainu b'chinat nefesh, that is your soul. Kamo de'at mar, kamo shene'er mar, nafshik ka'aretz. HaNefesh hi b'chinat aretz. So the soul is connected to the land of Israel. Ata yesh lo menucha ke nirmaz b'chinat shchon. Now a person has rest, as is hinted in the word shchon, which means to settle. So the rest of settling, like settling down. Hainu she'hanefesh leish lo naicha, that is, the soul has rest. Mechimat she'asa tshuva shlema, because it did complete tshuva. Shehi b'chinat Shabbat, which connected to Shabbat, b'chinat menucha kanal. So connected to rest is mentioned above. So imagine a person makes money on Shabbos. They have a business that, I don't know, it makes a lot of money on Shabbos. But they decided they're going to keep Shabbos, now they have to shut down the business. So every Shabbos, they're sitting there at home thinking, if I could just open the business. If I could just open the business.
Hechter for that.
There is, but there's, somebody really wants to keep Shabbos. So what you have to do is you have to have a partner that's not Jewish, and then on Shabbos, they own the business and you don't. Yeah, sure, there's also Shemitah, you can do Heter Mechira, which means that the land is still worked by Jews, but it's owned by a Beit Din. And there are halachic things. I mean, the Eruv is a completely halachic convention that you're not allowed to carry outside of your house, so let's extend the house. Let's make a string around the whole city, and then the whole city is your house, so now you can carry things. So it depends how far you want to go with those things. But a person says, I don't care, I want to really keep Shabbos, and I don't want my business to be open. But then they sit there every Shabbos and they say, I'm losing so much money, I could have $50,000, could have made $100,000 this Shabbos. They don't have menucha. They don't have that rest in their soul. But when they finally get to the point where they can let it go, and they say, all the money comes from Hashem. The famous story of the Chafetz Chaim. He was once the taxi driver on Friday afternoon. I think it was the Chafetz Chaim. And he said, are you going to be driving on Shabbos? And he said, yeah, of course. So the Chafetz Chaim said to him, I'll pay you so that you won't have to drive on Shabbos. Like whatever you would make, I'll pay you. It was either him or one of the big rabbis like him, the Chatam Sofer, something like that. And eventually the driver started keeping Shabbos. Chafetz Chaim told him, if we have a barrel of wine and we stick 2 spigots, or I don't know what it's called, where the wine would come out on both sides, is more wine going to come out? No, only it's the same amount in the barrel. So when Hashem decides at the beginning of the year how much money you're going to make, working on Shabbos doesn't make you any more money than you would have made otherwise. So when a person reaches that level, and they say, okay, whatever money I was supposed to get, I'm going to get, even if I close my store on Shabbos, now they have the aspect of tshuva shlema, Shehu B'chinat Shabbat, which is what he says here. And then a person can see their true level, their true humility. Chashivut u'gudulat Yisrael, the importance and the greatness of the Jewish people. Kimi shehu shefen be'emet, because somebody is truly humble. Ro'et chavero gadol mimenu, sees their friend and says their friend's on a higher level than them. And then as a result of that, they can see the greatness of the whole Jewish people. This is the meaning of herd your faith or develop your faith. That is, a person can be like Moshe Rabbeinu, as the Zohar calls him, the faithful shepherd. Because a person is willing to give up their soul for the sake of the Jewish people. That this is one of the conditions for being one of the true leaders of the Jewish people. That a person is willing to give up their soul for the Jewish people. And all the soldiers that gave up their souls for the Jewish people, Reb Shlomo would say, they're Kodesh, they're not just Kodesh, they're Kodesh or Kodeshim. They're the highest, the holiest of the holy. And really, for a Jew, there's not much higher of a level than to unintentionally sacrifice yourself for the sake of protecting Jews in the land of Israel. And I get very emotional when I hear about all these people that died and their families and their kids and their relatives and all these things. Yeah, it's a terrible tragedy. But if you think about the Jewish people before we had the state of Israel, so now most Jews live in Western societies. There's some type of protection, but in the time of the Holocaust and before the Holocaust, the Jews didn't have any way to protect themselves, and they were just slaughtered. During the Crusades, Jews were for practice. On the way to Jerusalem, they were slaughtering as many Jews as they could, and there was nothing you could do. So now at least Jews die protecting ourselves, but still, it's a great Mesilut Nefesh. Okay, so now the last section here. We're going to finish it in 10 minutes, B'ezrat Hashem. Then I have a short story for Pesach. Hata yavimo onat osafa shayechet leTorah zo. Now, Reb Nosson is going to bring an additional teaching that's connected to this Torah. Mosif Reb Nosson Zan, Reb Nosson adds, of Lesson of Me'ad Shach La'am, this is fitting for what we learned, Le'inyan shiflut, regarding being humble. Shu b'chinat ha'katuv, shvu ish tachtav. It's connected to the verse that every person should sit under his tree. Dahainu shemachzik atzmo shafel lamata tachat mekomo madrikato. So he translates this in a Hasidic way. The verse is from Sefer Shmot, each person should sit under their tree. But he says that each person should be below the level that they're actually on. So let's say a person's on a very high spiritual level, they shouldn't walk around saying, I'm on a high spiritual level. They should put themselves a little lower, even though they're on a high spiritual level. So if it's happened to me that people gave me cards, mashpia. You know what a mashpia is? In the Hasidic world, a mashpia is somebody, like a life coach, right. The spiritual life coach. Anybody who gives me a card that says they're a mashpia, there's no way I would call them. I want a mashpia that says I'm not a mashpia. Leave me alone. And that's shvu ish tachtav, that each person should put themselves a little below the level that they're actually on. Shuv shamati mishmo shel Rabbeinu zichrono levracha b'inyan zeh. So this is Reb Nosson like journaling. He said, I heard from Rabbi Nachman regarding this matter, she'al yedei zeh shezochim lerot shifluto be'emet, when a person truly merits to see their humility, al yedei zeh ein shum adam yachol lehotzio litchoto mimekomo. That allows a person to be so confident and self-assured, but in a humble way, that nobody could ever move them from their place. Dahainu lekapeach parnasanto chas v'shalom. That is to take away their parnasa, God forbid, ki me'achar shehu anav v'shafen be'emet, because the person is completely humble. Hu b'chinat ayin. They reach a level that they're as if they don't exist. Ve'eno tachat shlitat hamakom klan dahainu she'en lo makom miyuchad kivyachol. That a person isn't worried about their status or their honor, or even their place where they sit in shul. Anken bevadai ein yecholim litchoto mimekomo. So if a person is humble on that level, then you can't push a person out of their level because they don't have a level, because they're truly humble. It reminds me of Reb Shalom of blessed memory. So he used to sit in the front of the shul with me and the rabbi at Mayanot. And one day somebody came to him and said, are you the rabbi? And he said, no, that's the rabbi. And then he went for maybe a year and sat in a different place in shul every Shabbos. And I asked him what's going on. He said, I don't want anyone to think I'm the rabbi. For like an entire year. So at the back of the shul, he'd sit on this side, over there, until a year passed, and then he was willing to come back. Good thing nobody asked if he's the rabbi. But that's the idea. He was probably doing it from this lesson, I'm guessing. I know that he studied Likutey Moharan. That he said, okay, I got to be humble. Now, think about a person that's very important for them to be called a rabbi. I always loved when I was the gabbai in shul in Mayanotim. We'd call people up for an aliyah, and they would call themselves harav. How can you call yourself harav? You call yourself whatever you want. Your father's a rabbi, you can say ben harav, whatever. But you harav? Many times it was rabbis that were non-Orthodox rabbis. So it was very important for them to be called up as harav. I always thought it was a strange thing. V'zeh ramuz v'pasuk, and this was the meaning that's hidden to that in this verse. Shvu yishtachtав al yetzei ish makomo. Each person should sit under their place, and they shouldn't move from that place. Hainu she'al yedei shezachim l'shiflut shezel b'chinat shvu yishtachtав. That by a person meriting to be humble, which is the meaning of sit below your level, that a person always holds themselves a little bit below the level that they're actually at, until it's as if the person doesn't have a place, ואם כן, אין פרנסתו תלויה דווקא במקום הזה ולא במקום אחר. And if so, then a person's parnasa is not dependent on this place or that place. כי על ידי זה al yetze ish mimakomo, because through this that a person shouldn't go out from the place that they're in, ki shum adam lo yachol lahotzio v'lidchoto mimakomo. Since a person is not so tied to their place and the way that they're making money, then Hashem can send them money from any place. Dahainu lidchoto mipanasato chas v'shalom. That is, that a person should think that Hashem is taking away his parnas and giving it to somebody else, God forbid. Ki gam im yitche oto eze adam mimakomo, because even if a person pushes that person out from his place, adayin panasato tluya tiyeh mitzuya lo. Still, the parnasa will find that person. Ki hu me'al hamakom ve'eino taloi b'makom, because the person is above the place and not dependent on the place. V'lachein panasato tavo gam below makom ze kanan. So the person's parnasa will come from another place, as mentioned above. So you've probably seen that there are certain businesses that place is what makes the money, and then there are people that will leave that place, and the money will follow them. So that's what he's saying. A person that's on that level, the place itself is not the most important thing. This is what a sage of blessed memory said. Kol hayored leumanut chavero. Anybody that goes down to try to take away somebody's parnasa, ki'ilu ba'al eshet ish v'chulei, as if somebody stole a person's wife. V'yesh la'avin et kesher hadvayim. We can understand the connection between them. Madua im rotze litchot et chavero miparnasato. Why, if a person wants to take away another person's parnasa, nachshav ki'ilu ba'al eshet ish. Why would it be considered as if they're stealing their wife? Umeshiv ki me'achar she'yored le'umanut chavero ve'rotze litchot chavero me'makomo parnasato. Because when a person goes into another person's business and wants to take away that person's livelihood, nimtza shehu rotze lifgom b'bchinat shiflut hana'am shel chavero. It seems as if they want to damage their friend's humility. B'bchinat shvu ishtachtav. This is connected to every person should sit below their level. Kanal is mentioned above. Ki rotze la'asot chavero makom sheki'ilu kol parnasato lo yeh b'makom be'oto hamakom. They want to make the friend a place, or I guess what he's trying to say is they want to try to take away the place that the person is making their parnasa from. So they can push this person away from that place and take away their parnasa. Hainu, that is to say, okay, so he puts it in quotes. He says that is to damage the friend's humility. V'al ken u'ke'ilu ba'al eshet ish. And it says if a person is having an affair with another person's wife, ki eshet rashi tevot, because eshet is the acronym for shvu ishtachtav. Everybody should sit below their level, right? Aleph shin taf shvu ishtachtav. Hainu shepogem b'chinat anava b'shivlut shehu b'chinot shvu ishtachtav. Okay, so this is how Reb Nosson builds the lessons. He likes to do a lot of word playing and mixing things in together because he's giving it over on a very high level. He's saying if a person tries to take away another person's parnasa, then it's as if they're trying to take away their pride, their honor, their, imagine a person builds a business and say, this is my pride and joy. So they're trying to take that away from the person. But he says if a person is on the level of being truly humble, you can't take that away from them. You'll take away the place, but the parnasa will continue to follow them. Okay, that's where this was just an additional lesson that Reb Nosson added to that. So we're going to now have a short story. You have any questions, Yossi?
No.
So what we were talking about on Shabbos, that I would love to hear I'm not going to mention the name, but I'd love to hear the person.
I didn't have a chance to
read a few lines from here and say, I'm reading from here, and now I'm going to extrapolate on this whole lesson. That's what was lacking for me. because you see it, because I do a lot of the text reading for years now. So when I hear somebody talk about the Likutey Moharan, I want to hear them quoting some source or something. Okay, so this is a story that I probably tell every year. It's one of my favorite stories. It was right at the beginning of World War II, and there wasn't a lot. Oh wow, these are wrong glasses for this distance. There wasn't a lot of flour. I don't think there was any kosher flour for Pesach. So the Skulina Rebbe, but the Skulina Rebbe was able to get a hold of, I think it was like a big sack of flour. And even though it wasn't kosher for Pesach flour, he declared that considering the circumstances, this is going to be kosher for Pesach. And he made a lot of matzot. He made very small matzot, whatever the halachic size was. And he was giving them out to the Jewish community. And everybody, I think, got one or two of these matzot. So the Vizhnitzer Rebbe sent his son to the Skulina Rebbe to get matzot. And he says, of course, and he gives him 2 matzot. And he comes back. It's a great story, right? He comes back with the matzot, and he says to, and then his father says to him, "Why don't you go back and get some more?" He says, "Tati, it's embarrassing. It's a war, and there isn't enough matzah for everybody, and he's only giving, 2 to everyone." He said, "Go and you tell him you're doing the mitzvah of kibudav, doing the mitzvah of honoring your father." So he goes back to the Skulina Rebbe, and he says, "I'm really sorry to ask you for some more matzot, but my father insisted," and he said, "I'm doing the mitzvah of honoring my father." So he says, "Okay, here's 2 more matzot." So he gives him 2 matzot, and then comes back. And the next day, I guess it was Erev Pesach, he says, "Go back to the Skulina Rebbe and ask him for 2 more matzot." And he said, "Come on, you're going to embarrass me. This is terrible." He goes back to the Rebbe, and he says, "Rebbe, I'm really sorry to ask you, but my father insists on 2 more matzot." And the Rebbe says, "I'm sorry, my son, I don't have any more matzot, even for myself." Right, and I forgot the part that he sends a package back with him. He says, "I don't even have for myself." And my father said, "If that's the case, then he told me to give you this box." And he saw 2 matzot that he baked with his own 2 hands. Because, of course, the Vizhnitzer Rebbe knew that the Skulina Rebbe, being a tzaddik emet, being a true tzaddik, would give away his own matzot to somebody else. And he'd be left with none. And that's why he insisted on extra matzot. You see, there's the 2 tzaddikim. One tzaddik knew that the other tzaddik was going to do that. But the Skulina probably didn't know that the Vizhnitzer was going to be saving matzot for him. He just gave over the matzot, with a complete whole heart. Everyone will see after Pesach.